So we're looking at equations now that are absolute value equations, and they are linear. Okay, we'll get to nonlinear ones later. First of all, absolute value means, or these symbols stand for absolute value, and what they represent, you might remember, is this. If I've got the number 5 and I put absolute value signs in front of it, or around it, what I'm asking is, how far is this number away from 0? And of course, that's 5. Well, if I had written absolute value of -5, -5, what's its distance from 0? It's still 5. Okay. What about -24? Well, how far is -24 away from 0? 24. Okay. Lots of students will get used to this idea that the absolute value of 3 is 3, or I'm sorry, the absolute value of -3 is 3, and that's okay with them. And then, so then they say, well, that means the absolute value of 3 must be -3. And it's not like it just reverses the sign. It's a better way to say it would be, it always makes the statement inside positive. Okay? And so something like this, -2 minus 7 absolute value would mean calculate both of these things. Calculate the quantity inside. -2 minus 7 is -9, and then make it positive. Okay. So let's clear the board here, get things cleaned up, and get ready to start in here. I should make one thing clear on that. If you have absolute value of 3 minus 10, okay, it's not like it just makes all the negatives positive inside, and so you'd make that a plus and call it 13. You'd say 3 minus 10 is -7, and then the absolute values make it positive, so positive 7. So when I'm looking at an equation like this, I'm really asking what number would I put into this equation so when I take its absolute value, I get 3. Well, 3 would do it, wouldn't it? Okay. If you take the absolute value of 3, you get 3. Well, also, -3 would work. Okay? Because if you take the absolute value of -3, you get 3. So when the problems get more complicated, it's still the same idea. What number do I need to put in for n so that when I add 6 to it and take the absolute value, I get 14? Okay. These are notes over here. We'll get to those in just a second. So a lot of students will write n equals 8 because clearly if I take 8 plus 6, I get 14, take the absolute value of that, you get 14. So they'll assume the other answer must be -8. Okay? Because on the previous page you had 3 and -3. Well, try -8. -8 plus 6 is -2. If you take the absolute value of -2, you don't get 14. So -8 didn't work. So what's the other answer? Well, here's the way I like to think of it. I want you to imagine that this statement right in here is just some thing. In fact, oftentimes I name it in my classroom when I'm teaching. I say, pretend that n plus 6 is called Smith. And then ask yourself, how far away from 0 is Smith? Well, he must be up here at 14. Okay, there he is. Okay. Or he could be down here at -14. Okay. I've got two options. Okay. In fact, I have to account for both options. Okay. So Smith either is at 14 or he's at -14. So I ask people, well, please write down these two statements then. Either n plus 6, which is Smith, is at 14, or n plus 6 is at -14. Okay? So if n plus 6 is at 14, when I solve for n, I get 8, like I had before. Okay? So check, took care of that. But if n plus 6 is equal to -14, when I solve this, okay, n is going to equal -20. Okay? So there's my other answer. Let's check and make sure it worked. -20 plus 6 is -14, and then when you take the absolute value, you get 14. Okay? So what I tell people is, here, jot these notes down. Okay? 3 steps. 1, if you simply copy the equation without the absolute value signs, as we did right here, as we did right there, you'll get an equation you can solve to get the first answer. Okay? Then, that's this one. Then, copy the equation again, but switch the number to a negative. So that's what we did right there. Okay? Then, solve both equations. You'll get your answers, and you're done. Okay? So we're going to go on and take on another problem, but we'll use that same idea. So I've left the notes over there on the side again. Okay? So let's start into this by copy the equation straight away. Don't change a thing. Just delete the absolute value signs. Okay? Done. Did that. Okay? Then copy it again right here. Copy it again, but switch the number to a negative. So we'll write 4n plus 6 equals negative 34. Okay? And then we'll simply solve each equation. Subtract 6, you're going to get 4n equals 28, which makes n 7. Subtract 6, you get 4n equals negative 40. I realize I'm kind of hurrying through that, but I'm assuming that you've solved equations like this for a while. So n equals negative 10. So here are both of your answers. Okay. Let's do another one. Okay. By the way, I've been in this section right here of setting up and solving. Okay. We'll get to when you might get tricked. Actually, we've gotten to when you might get tricked right now. Okay. With this one, you could be tricked on this thing. Let's start into our notes here. The first they say is copy the equation exactly as it's written. Okay, and then copy it again and make the number negative. Okay, so here I go. When I add 2 to each side, I'm going to get 5b equals negative 10. So b is going to equal negative 2. Okay? And when I solve this one here, I'll get 5b equals 14. So b equals, let's see, 14 divided by 5 is going to be 2.8. Okay? So it looks like I've got my answers. Well, let's check and see if they work. Negative 2, let's see if that works. 5 times negative 2 is negative 10. Minus 2 is negative 12. Take the absolute value of negative 12, you get 12. And wait, we were supposed to get negative 12. So this one didn't work. So it doesn't matter if this one works or not. This one didn't. Something's wrong. Well, what I tell people is if we'd known to look for it, we wouldn't have been tricked by this. So you probably won't be tricked again with this question. That's what's going on right here. These are absolute value signs, aren't they? They make everything positive. So how in the world could you ever get a negative? You can't. Okay? So you can't take the absolute value of something and get a negative. So when you see an equation like that where it says the absolute value of something is negative, stop right there. There's no solution. Okay? So be careful about that. That's when you might get tricked. Okay? So we've got another topic here, when and how to uncomplicate them first. And here's what we're looking at with that. Okay? This one needs to be uncomplicated first. Okay? Some of you might be thinking, well, that's impossible. It's already complicated. But what's happening here is we've got an absolute value and minus 7 equals 33. And what you'll find is if you start writing these equations and following the instructions like you did before, by simply copying the equation without the absolute value and then copying it again by making this negative 33, you'll get wrong answers. What you have to do is get this negative 7 out of there first so you have just the absolute value signs by themselves. In fact, I've got another set of something else to add to the notes on that, is get the absolute value signs alone first. Okay? So we've got to get the absolute value signs alone. We'll do that by simply adding 7 to each side, just like you'd expect to do. You get absolute value of 5p equals 40. And now you're ready to use the other three steps in the notes over there. You'll write 5p equals 40. Just write the thing without the absolute value sign. And 5p equals negative 40. And then solve each of them. P is going to equal 8. And p is going to equal negative 8. Okay. Well, finally, let's put it all together here. This one has a couple things we need to uncomplicate. First, we need to get rid of this 7 that's out here, and we need to get rid of an 8. That 7 has been added to everything else, or has been combined with everything else by an addition. So let's unadd it by subtracting. Okay. That'll get us 8, absolute value 4p minus 2, absolute value equals 80. Okay. We're not quite ready yet to copy the equation and go on from there because we've got an 8 out here. And that 8 is attached to everything else by multiplication. So let's just divide it off. Let's divide both sides by 8. Okay. And I get 4p minus 2, absolute value equals 10. And now I'm ready to write my two equations. Let's step over here on the side and do this. 4p minus 2 equals 10. 4p minus 2 equals negative 10. And when you add 2 to each side, you'll get 12. And then 12 divided by 4 will get you p equals 3. When you add 2 to each side on this one, negative 10 plus 2 is negative 8. Divided by 4, you're going to get p equals negative 2. So there are your two solutions right there. Make sure you include both of them, or you haven't given a complete answer. All right? That's it for absolute values.